Welcome to Sevier Heights. If it's your first time with us online, we're so glad you dropped by. And if you're here to rewatch a past message, you're in the right place. If you have any questions about service times, giving, next steps, or if you want to learn more about who we are, click the link in our description or just visit sevierheights.org. Thank you so much for being here. Let's jump into Sunday's message.
Also, if anybody is here next Sunday morning, Kari is going to be speaking in all our morning services. And so come support Kari. I'm pumped. How many people are going to the beach for spring break? Show of hands. Somebody scream out. Where are you going? Panama City, Pensacola. Over here? Seaside. Hey. Good for you. All right. Anybody else? Anybody going to Charleston area? I'll be there. All right. Give me a shout. You going to Charleston? You playing golf? Oh, me too. All right. Let's jump in tonight. I think most people in this room can think back to what it was like as a kid. And you guys have got memories of your parents giving you conversations that were about guidance or direction or instruction. You probably got some early memories along those lines. Like parents would make statements like color on the paper, not on the wall, right? How many people remember something similar to that? Lots of you. How about this one? Don't put the knife in the outlet. In addition to that one, what are you doing with the knife in the first place? A few years ago, my son, actually several years ago, when he turned 4 for Christmas, I thought it was time he got his first knife. And I gave him a pocket knife. My wife said, too young. I'm like, no, we got to start him early. And so I gave him advice. I'm like, Silas, here's the thing. You can have this knife, but do not open it unless I'm around. Like mom or dad have to be around. That's it. And he's like, okay. And it wasn't 5 minutes later, we're in the other room and we heard a blood-curdling scream. My son had slit open the inside of his hand. Wife was like, I told you not to do this. So this was one of those moments of instruction and guidance with kids. Here's another one. You might remember this is you can't run out in the street like that. Doesn't matter if it's a church parking lot. Doesn't matter if it's in your neighborhood. You just can't run out in the street like that. And if you noticed, your parents that gave you advice like this as a kid, that advice probably did not stop when you were a kid. It grew. Like perhaps it went further. Dad, mom called you and like, hey, it's been raining. First time it's rained in a long time. I've seen a couple wrecks. I just want to encourage you to be super careful tonight, right? Or it's a holiday and don't want you being out too late. If you are, I need you to be super careful. People have drunk a lot on nights like this. They may go through a red light. I just want you to be careful and cautious, right? Like those words of advice and caution come from parents. It doesn't matter if you're young, doesn't matter if you're old. It's like they're speaking into us with guidance, with instruction, and a lot of times it's about our own safety. Well, I want you to imagine with me for a moment that there's a dad that has a Friday lunch scheduled with his college-age daughter, and he picks a restaurant. She's off on the Friday. Picks a restaurant, and he picks a table back in the corner of the restaurant for a little bit of privacy. And he begins a dialogue with his daughter, and he's like, this is going to be awkward, but it's so important because I love you so much. And he says, I just want to talk to you about something. One day, whether you're at work, school, even at church with friends, one day you're going to find yourself in a situation. And you're going to get to talking to this guy, and the guy, for all practical purposes, you'll think you're normal, but he's going to treat you super special. Like you might think you're plain, and he's going to give you the idea that you're attractive. You'll be noticed with this guy. And your life could be boring and routine, but when you get around him, it'll be entertaining. Like it'll be interesting, it'll be exciting. There's something about him that'll bring life to you. It's almost borderline intoxicating. The daughter's like, okay, Dad. He's like, no, serious, I just want to press in. Because there will be a day that this happens, and that guy might be married. Better yet, you might be married. And by that time in life, you might have kids. And I just want you to know, like, there will be a time when you don't feel seen with others, but you're recognized with him. You don't feel valued by others, but you feel valued by him. And I just want you to be careful. And she's like, Dad, I get it. And he's like, no, you don't. I just want to emphasize this for guidance, safety. It's happened to your uncle. You know, your aunt and your uncle, like this happened and the marriage exploded. You saw what happened to the kids. It didn't just happen to your uncle. Like this month, it happened to your best friend's parents. And you see their marriages hanging by a thread. I don't even know if they're going to go through counseling. And as I told you, like the girl at work, she's only been married 2 years. The ink's not even dry on the wedding certificate, and they're already going through a divorce. And I just want you to know, I'm super concerned because you're about to enter a phase that I've been in, that I'm still in, and it's a borderline epidemic. And so I want to talk to you about it. Like I want to get front and center because I love you so much, and I'm just worried about what could happen. Now, for a second, you hear all those conversations. Parents have had conversations similar to that with you. Conversations like, don't color on the wall. Don't put a knife in the outlet. Like, be careful when you cross the street. Hey, it's raining. Be super careful. It's a holiday. Be cautious. And then they give you this heads up. Imagine. It's awkward. But there will be a day, and there's a relationship you shouldn't be in, but everything inside of you wants it, even though you're perhaps in a serious relationship already, or maybe even married, and you got kids. If that conversation is strange, I want you to listen to the words of Solomon to his kids. Proverbs chapter 5, verse 7, he says, now then, my sons, I want you to listen to me. Do not turn aside from what I say. Keep to a path that's far from her. Don't go near the door of her house. Now, the context of this is one of his sons is getting enticed by a woman whose husband is out of town. And Solomon gives his son advice and guidance. He's like, do not go anywhere near that. If you do, you're playing with fire. This is King Solomon. I want to set up the story tonight. Do you know who his dad was? His dad was King David. Do you know who his mom was? His mom was Bathsheba. And there was a royal scandal that took place before Solomon was even born. And the details were so well known that Solomon knew the ins and outs. Matter of fact, everybody did. His mom and dad hooked up while both of them were already married to someone else. And it destroyed his dad's reputation. It caused a huge divide with the family between Solomon and his siblings. And so you might have a question, why in the world is Tim talking about this in the middle of this series on relationships? Well, here's why. It takes years of slow, steady progress to build a healthy marriage, but only moments to undo one. Now, that's not a surprise to many of you. Perhaps the last year, maybe the last few years, you saw it with your parents. You saw things fall apart as soon as you got to college. I want to take this even further. I want you to consider this. It takes years to build a reputation, but only moments to ruin one. It takes years to build a healthy marriage. It takes years to build a healthy family, but it doesn't take years to lose them. I want you to think about, let's say a long tenured coach. Let's say he's a basketball coach. Got great ratio on wins to losses. But there's a game in particular, he calls timeout, loses his cool, starts to say things that no coach should even say. Demeaning, degrading, especially to one of the players. And it just so happens in that moment that the parent is catching all this on their phone, and they decide to post it. In one moment, his future is shattered. What took years to build as far as his reputation, gone in an instant. And that's why we're talking about something like this tonight in the middle of a marriage series. I want to go back to the conversation between the dad and his daughter. If you think that awkward conversation is as bad as it gets, I want you to consider me talking to you tonight, because there's a lot of difficult situations represented in this room. There are some of you that have been in a serious dating relationship, and you broke up because of something that happened, and now you're back together, and it's the process of healing. and you thought things were taken care of, and here all of a sudden, Tim's talking about this very issue, and it's almost like I've taken a scab off a wound, so it's kind of awkward between us. Others of you tonight, perhaps maybe someone in your family, like you and someone else, you've gone through this series where it feels like a war zone, meaning someone has been chronically unfaithful. Maybe it was dad, maybe it was mom. Maybe it happened when you were much younger. And maybe it's someone in this room right now in serious dating relationship, been going on forever, and then you found out that someone's been cheating. Tonight, as I talk about this topic, I know it's awkward for you too. Some of you tonight, let's take it much further. I think there are people in this room that were probably talking about marriage with someone. And like the dad and the daughter, there was a time with that someone you felt unseen, but now you've met someone else and you feel seen. There was a time that you felt plain, but now from this guy or this girl's perspective, you're attractive. And what was boring and routine is now like exciting. And you're trying to figure out, should I be with this person or this person? And truth be told, let's say this person's not even a follower of Christ, and you're like moving in this direction, and all this world is coming to a collision. Tonight, like, this conversation is awkward for you and I, but I want you to know it's so valuable and so important. Not just for what's going on now, but what's going on down the road, what's going on with your family. And I'm gonna tell you this priority tonight. I wish you could write this down, because I can assure you this will happen when you're married. I didn't open up about this morning, and it's not because I have anything to hide, but I think it would relate more in this audience. Like, I had been in the college ministry for 10 years. I guess I'd been married for probably 15, I would say at the time. And there was a person in particular, like, I've always given my cell phone out to everyone. Like, it's just, I take pride in being accessible. Like, I don't want to be somebody that's out of touch. I want to be approachable. And there was one girl in particular that I didn't even think anything of it. Got my number, slowly would reach out, but I never have meals or anything with just girls one-on-one. It's always like in a larger group setting. But this girl kept like reaching out, wanting to get together. I told her I don't, but she kept pushing. And I realized that there was a deep interest. And it was going much further than I thought. Nothing crossed any line, but I remember telling my wife about it. I'm like, hey, I just want you to know, I could tell you this girl's name, I could tell you where she was from. And I said, I just want to put this on your radar. I told some of the staff, I told some of the students, I'm like, I gotta be careful of this. I changed my cell phone immediately. But I tell you that story because I want you to know, if it can happen to me, it can happen to anybody. And there's so much at stake on a topic like this. Like I said, like, it's taken a long time to build a reputation, but it doesn't take a long time to lose it. So what I want to do tonight is I want us to look at Solomon's dad and mom. I want to see what happened and what we can learn from it, because there's observations in this season of life and the next season of life for everyone in the room. I want to break it down into about 3 different scenes. Number 1, I want to begin with an evening stroll, because King David and Bathsheba's story starts in this section of scripture, 2 Samuel chapter 11, verse 1. In the spring, at the time when kings are supposed to go off to war, David remained in Jerusalem. So one morning, David wakes up, he's walking around in the palace, and he happens to look down and he sees this woman that's bathing, and she's naked, and things begin to spiral. It's spring, which means kings go to war during the spring. They don't go to war in the winter. It's too cold, it's messy, it's sloppy. And so it's springtime, he should be at war, but he's not a young guy anymore, he's now middle-aged. The kingdom's been established, like everything is firm. The palace is built. There's no more big wars to fight, small battles, and so he sends everyone else without him. And let me explain the housing situation back then. When it was inside a walled city, you had roofs, and then there would be a house beside it, another roof, a house beside it, another roof. It's not like kind of neighborhoods today where you've got houses and yards. Like the fields and yards were outside the city walls. So when you would go outside your roof, you were looking down on someone else's, and this is why David saw Bathsheba. And as soon as he saw her, he knew what was going on. And he asked the question to one of the servants. He's like, "Who's that?" And the servant responded pretty much, "She's taken." That's Uriah's wife. And Uriah is on the battlefield like everyone else. Her name was Bathsheba. David was intrigued and enticed, and so David had her come up to his place, and they slept together. As you read this story and you hear about David, David's a man after God's own heart. He's got this reputation to withhold. And I want to ask a question to David, but it's easy for me to ask it on this side of the story. I want to ask, like, David, what's happening? I want to press in even more because I know what this is like. David, are you bored? Like, is that what's going on? Are you bored in your marriage? Are you bored in your relationship? Something that I want all of us to understand tonight, and I'm telling you, each of these statements are going to matter. Ready? Every long-term relationship eventually settles into a routine. It doesn't matter if you're dating somebody 6 months or a year, let's say 7 years. It's how long my wife and I dated before we got married. It doesn't matter if you've been married 5 years, 10 years. My wife and I have now been married 25 years. I'm telling you, every long-term relationship eventually settles into a routine. And it can be a good routine. But guess what? It's still a routine. Let me explain it this way. Some of you around the corner, maybe somebody in here is engaged, gonna get married. You'll get married around the corner, and what's gonna happen is the bride and the groom are gonna be pumped about the wedding, bride more so than the guy. It's like this big party. It's excitement. Like picking out dresses and flowers and venues and food, who's coming, who's not coming, all that stuff. And there's all this excitement. But about 6 months to a year afterwards, somebody says, "Hey, how's the marriage?" Typical response is, kind of routine, like pretty predictable. Like he gets home from work, I get home from work, and we're tired. We eat dinner, maybe watch a show, maybe have a talk, go to bed. Same thing again and again and again. You add into the mix, like sometimes we look into the sink and it's wet and we're like, okay, maybe we need to check the dishwasher. I think it's leaking. Or, hey, why don't you take the dog to the vet tomorrow? I did it last time. And there's this sense of monotony that happens, and it kind of gets boring. It kind of gets to be a routine. And here's what I want you to understand. Long-lasting relationships have interesting experiences, but it's typically around the edges. Like for the most part, I don't mean it bad. It's routine, it's same. Some people might refer to it as boring. But at the heart of long-lasting relationships, eventually everyone settles into a routine. And understand, there's nothing wrong with routine. Like in our mind, we've convinced ourselves that it's boring, that routine is like stuck. Understand, every life eventually settles into sameness. But I want you to understand this. There's beauty in what's boring. You don't understand that. Like in a healthy relationship, there will be sameness. There will be moments that it feels boring, but there's meaning in the mundane. And so you and I have to learn in life to master the mundane. What looks boring and what feels boring behind the scenes is brilliantly disguised, ready? It's faithfulness. You want to be a faithful husband, guys. Ladies, you want to be a faithful wife. If you're in a long-term dating relationship and it's serious, you want to be faithful. But what happened in the story is David's bored and he's intrigued. And so he decides to cut corners. That's scene one. Here's scene number two, unexpected consequences. Like David doesn't plan this. He's just thinking it's just one night. It's just a fling. But what happens is a messenger, a few weeks later, sends word to David, hey, Bathsheba's pregnant. Uriah's still at war. And even this is a Bible story. Understand, people can still count to 9. Everybody knows that Uriah is not going to be the dad of this child. So that includes David too. And he decides to fix it. He sends a letter to Joab. Joab's the general of the army, and he says, hey, I need Uriah to come back home. So sure enough, Uriah comes back home. He's got a meeting with David. The story continues. David says, hey, how are the troops? How's the battle going? How's the morale? How's Joab doing? And Uriah gives all these answers, right? David says, listen, I just want to reward you for all you've done. I just want you to stay here for the night. Have dinner with your wife, spend time with the family. Tomorrow, go back to the battlefield. Well, Uriah is one of David's best warriors. He's referred to as one of David's mighty men. Uriah that night doesn't decide to go home with his wife. Instead, he goes to the king's palace at the porch where David's servants are and the rest of David's bodyguards, and he sleeps there. And David thinks he's got everything taken care of, but the next morning he wakes up and he finds out from a messenger that Uriah slept at the porch. He didn't go home. David calls a meeting with Uriah. He's like, what are you doing? I told you to spend some time with your wife. And he's like, how in the world can I do that? Our men are on the battlefield. They're sleeping in tents and sleeping on the ground. David, I can't do that. I can't be with my wife while all that's going on. David's like, I understand. Kudos to you. Stay one more night. But this time, I want you to go to your wife's house. That evening, David decides to throw a party, banquet. And on that night, he selects his servants and tells them, when it comes to Uriah's wine glass, I want you to fill it up again and again and again and again. Sure enough, it's what happens. Uriah's tipsy. And instead of walking that night to his wife's house, once again, he stumbles his way to the king's porch with David's servants and bodyguards. And once again, he spends the night in that same spot instead of going home. You know what this is getting at? Uriah's got more dignity when he's drunk than David does when he's sober. And David finds out again the next day. Calls a meeting again with Uriah, but this time he hands him a sealed letter. He says, I need you to take this to Joab. Little does Uriah know that this sealed letter is a death sentence for Uriah. He takes the letter back to the battlefield. Joab is given the letter. Joab opens the letter. Uriah doesn't know. He follows the king's orders. King says, I want you to take Uriah and a group of men. I want you to put them at the front of the battlefield at one of those big spots where everything's going on. And while they're there, I want you to retreat with the rest of the men. Leave them exposed. Sure enough, they do it. Uriah and his men are killed. Word gets to David, and word eventually gets to Bathsheba, Uriah's wife. She goes into mourning for a period of days, and then she moves in with David. I want you to know this. David thinks he's in control. But things are happening outside of David's control. What does this mean? Ready? Here's what it means for us right now. We get to choose our behavior, but we don't get to choose the consequences of our behavior. I mean, you think about it. David chose to sleep with this girl. He didn't choose she'd get pregnant. He didn't choose that her husband, instead of sleeping at her house, would go sleep on the porch. He didn't choose those. So think about it. We get to choose our behavior, but we don't get to choose the consequences of our behavior. What does that look like? Well, it looks like this. Maybe some of you decide after class, after work, you stop at a bar on the way home and you have not just a couple drinks, you've got a few more. It's your choice, right? You make that choice. But what you don't choose is on the way back to the apartment, to the dorm, you don't choose getting pulled over by the officer. And you don't get to choose your blood alcohol level. You chose your behavior, you just don't get to choose the consequences. I mean, that plays out again and again and again. I want us to go back to the conversation between the dad and the daughter. As he's having that awkward conversation and putting these things on her radar, like it's happened to me, it can happen to you. One of the things that he says that you need to be aware of is a statement. The statement is this: no one will ever know. You don't get to choose that. I mean, you think you do, but you don't. I mean, like, imagine this. You can play through the scenario. Some of you know this with your dad. Your dad chose to cheat. And then he chose to end the relationship with the person that he was with. He thought he could choose the control on the situation, that the lady would keep quiet, but he couldn't choose to keep her quiet. She chose to talk to your mom. And she chose to blow things up. And what your dad didn't choose, what your dad can't choose, is whether or not your mom wants to stay married, whether or not your mom's gonna change the locks, whether or not your mom's gonna lawyer up. But then your mom and dad make statements like this: well, at least the kids will make it through it, they're strong. No, you don't get to choose how your kids respond. You don't get to choose which kid will talk to you and which kid won't talk to you for the rest of the next 2, 3, 4, maybe even 10 years. I'm telling you, We make choices when it comes to our actions, but you can't choose the consequences. And one of the consequences that David deals with, he writes it down in a book called Psalms. And he says, look, one of the consequences I'm dealing with that I didn't choose is my life emotionally, relationally, spiritually. It feels dry and barren. Listen to it. Here's how he described it. Psalm 32, verse 4. He says, for day and night, God, your hand was heavy on me. My strength was sapped as in the heat of summer. It's like he's walking around in the heat. There is no shade 24/7. God's hand is heavy on him. And then the consequences come further, where there's a prophet that's a friend of David. His name's Nathan. And he confronts David. He's like got the courage to confront David, the backbone to confront the king. And he says these simple words, David, you killed a man and you took his wife. And as king, David could have said, look, I'm king. I can do what I want. But David, because he's a man after God's own heart, made a stupid decision. He said, look, I own it. I sinned. I went out of bounds. And this leads to scene 3, the road home. I told you David wrote some Psalms. There were 2 in particular that he wrote after this situation with Bathsheba, Psalm 32 and Psalm 51. If anyone in this room ever feels extremely guilty, caught in shame over sin, you ought to go read Psalm 32 and Psalm 51. David continues this healing process on the road home with God. In Psalm 32, verse 5, listen to this. He says, and then I acknowledged my sin to you, God, and I didn't cover up my iniquity. I came clean. I said, I will confess my transgressions to the Lord, and you forgave the guilt of my sin. So he finally comes clean. He's like, God, I'm sorry, I messed up, I blew it. And guess what? God forgave him. Now, here's something to understand about the Bible. David lived hundreds of years before Jesus came to earth. Here you and I are on the other side of Jesus already coming to earth. But David was looking at the cross forward, and we're looking back at the cross backward. And the beauty of the cross is that's the very place that Jesus chose to be our substitute sufferer and pay for our sin. Like pay for all the sins of humanity, but that means specifically your sin and my sin. So that means every time you and I took something that didn't belong to us, it was paid for. And I don't just mean like stole something, I mean took something like someone's reputation or someone's value. Not just when we took something, but anytime we said something we shouldn't have said. We trashed someone behind the scenes. We gossiped. We told stories that we never should have told. Maybe we didn't speak up and we should have spoke up. Jesus died for those sins. Those sins that we took something, those sins when we said something, those sins when we did something that we shouldn't have done. Understand, at the cross, as a follower of Jesus, at that spot, that's where Jesus paid for our sins. And understand, that's what David is looking forward to and asking God that he would cleanse him. In a real sense, when it comes to the cross, understand, God doesn't pretend it didn't happen like our sin. No, Jesus paid the price because it did happen. And when you and I confess our sin, here's what happens. God doesn't see us, he sees Jesus. It's like Jesus gets in the way, and that's why David responds in that second psalm, Psalm 51. He says these words, cleanse me with hyssop, and I'll be clean. Wash me, God, and I'll be whiter than snow. David comes clean with God, and God gives him a bath. But now I got to ask a question. Does that mean everything is better? It is between him and God. I understand when God forgives, we become right with God. But it may take a long time to become right with people. And some of you have been chronically unfaithful in a serious dating relationship. And some of you know the fallout, the shrapnel of a parent that's been chronically unfaithful in a marriage. Understand, that's why that dad and his daughter are at lunch that day. The dad's super concerned. Has the best conversation he probably can with the daughter, even though it's awkward. You know why? Because he knows how easily our hearts drift toward places they were never meant to go. And so the dad pulls out his phone, opens the notes app, and he begins to highlight a few things that he wants to talk about real quick with his daughter. It's like, I know it's private, it's awkward, but I gotta get this out. These are things that I've learned because I've been in the same scenario. So here's what he highlights, and I don't want you guys to forget. Number one, he talks about healthy friendships. He tells his daughter, you need healthy friendships in life, meaning healthy friendships of the same gender. Other people that love Jesus a little bit older than you, that you're looking up toward. I understand at the Walk, at this church, Sevier Heights, it's why we put such an emphasis on groups. For you to meet people of the same gender that are going through similar struggles, but you're developing healthy friendships. Do you know why this is so important? Concerning the topic tonight, I often drift into unhealthy relationships because we lack healthy ones. So that's the first thing the dad talks about, healthy friendships. Here's the second thing he talks to his daughter about. Be careful when you're running on empty. There will be seasons in everyone's life in this room when you are absolutely drained. Emotionally, relationally, spiritually, because here's why. Life can be so stinking hard. Schedules can be so full. And you will be consistently feeling like you're pouring yourself out in all these different places. And when that happens, here's what I want you to understand. When you're running on empty, vulnerability increases when you're empty. Your guard drops. There's something inside of you, something inside of me says, man, I'm constantly pouring myself out for other people, and yet I feel overlooked. I feel like I'm been taken for granted. Who's gonna help me? And out of nowhere, ladies, there'll be some guy. I will. Guys, there'll be some lady. And for the first time, if you're on empty, if you're running on fumes, you're in a vulnerable spot. Another way of saying it, understand this, be careful when you're so tired that you don't care anymore. And you're willing just to cut corners in relationships, all right? So the dad highlights healthy friendships. He talks about running on empty. And here's the last thing he talks about. This one's tough. He talks about creating distance or space. This one's counterintuitive because it has to do with how you feel. When you feel invisible, but all of a sudden you're seen, when you feel plain and all of a sudden someone else thinks you're attractive, when you're in a marriage and things feel boring and routine and all of a sudden you meet someone and it's like entertaining and exciting, this person can make you feel so alive. But that's why it's so important and counterintuitive, but you have to create distance. Because here's what's gonna happen. You're gonna wanna cross the line and you're gonna make sure that your schedule, either consciously or subconsciously, is gonna consistently bump into that person. You park close to where they park. You go to the gym when they go to the gym. You walk in the greenway when they go to the greenway. You walk on the street in the neighborhood when they walk on the street. You like everything they post, and eventually you're exchanging numbers, you're talking, you're catching up. And this is why Solomon said to his sons, I want to read it again. Now then, my sons, listen to me. Do not turn aside from what I say. Keep to a path far from her. Do not go near the door of her house. Don't do it. Create space. Create distance. Intentionally decide, even though they make me feel noticed, I don't belong close to that person. As the dad finishes those words, and he shuts down his phone, looks at his daughter and says, look, I know this was awkward, but I love you so much, and I'm just telling you from experience, you don't want to go there. You know what he knows? He knows what most people know that have walked long enough. It takes years to build a reputation, but only moments to ruin one. We saw it in this story tonight. It takes years to build a healthy marriage. You guys know this, it takes years to build a healthy family. But it doesn't take years to lose them. Tonight, can we pray together? God, in this setting, there are all types of students. Some of them, this topic is like pulling a scab off a wound. For some in this room, it hits way too close to home. They were in a serious dating relationship. Someone cheated. A parent was chronically unfaithful. Then there are others in this room, God, that perhaps they're in a very serious dating relationship with someone else that's a follower of Jesus, and they're even talking marriage, but it's gotten boring. It's become routine. And now they're intrigued by someone else that's interested in them. And God, they're at a crossroads on what to do. I pray that you would give them wisdom, give them godly counsel. I pray that they would have healthy friendships that could speak into them. I pray that they would be able to notice in the middle of a semester, whether it's midterms, papers, presentations, that they may be running on empty. And when we're empty, we're vulnerable. God, I also pray that they would understand the importance of creating distance, because everything within them is intrigued. Everything within them is looking for something that's not boring. But God, remind all of us, boring is beautiful. Boring is often brilliantly disguised as faithfulness. And so God, as so many in this room are at a crossroads, I pray that they would see how long it took David to build a reputation, but how quick he ruined it. And I pray this tonight in Jesus' name.
Let's stand and respond together. Worthy of every song we could ever sing, worthy of all the praise we could ever bring, worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Jesus, the name above every other name. Jesus, the only one who could ever save. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Oh, we live for you. Let's sing holy. Holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder. Show me who you are and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me. Holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder. Show me who you are and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me. Oh, I would never. Let's sing, I will build. and I will